Welcome to AMT's Nedbank Fresh Produce Market Overview. This week we look at why most market prices can come under pressure with demand that can remain on lower levels. All in this week's episode, proudly brought to you by Nedbank and Villa. Let's start off with this week's top market movers. Our biggest winner was garlic with a 9% increase, while cabbage prices showed the biggest drop with 14% lower prices over the past week. We don't have one specific crop to watch this week, but I think that the lower general demand on the markets can drive most prices downward, so something to keep an eye on. But with that, let's dive into the latest prices for this week. Although the national average potato price stayed on a lower level, it increased slightly due to lower volumes and traded on an average price of R54.18 per 10 kilogram bag. Large potatoes traded higher at 63, mediums at 52 and smalls at 32 rand. Mondials were slightly up to 51 rand, while Cifras came in at 63 rand. The average price for class 1 potatoes across all sizes was 60 rand 50. Volume started off with a relatively higher carryover stock this week due to the holiday on Monday. We are also expecting demand to stay on a lower level this and maybe next week, which can keep prices under pressure, especially considering that a lot of production regions are still in the markets at the moment. The lower prices can, however, result in some producers to send their potatoes to the processing sector rather, which can keep volumes slightly lower this week. The average onion price decreased to 95.08 rand per 10 kilogram and is now 1% lower than a year ago. Brown onions averaged on 97, red onions increased sharply to 156, while white onions decreased to 91 rand. Large onions traded at 101, mediums were also on 101, and smalls traded on 77 rand. Last year, the average price peaked in June at around 93 rand, but the expectation always was that the price can trade higher this year due to more potatoes and less onions on the market. We can therefore expect onion volumes to stay lower in June and prices to remain on these higher levels for now. I, however, also think that we have seen a peak in the prices about 2 weeks ago, and that higher volumes over the next 2 months can drive prices slightly downward from here on out. Tomato prices decreased by 3% to a national average price of 13.03 rand per kilogram. Large tomatoes traded at 14.43 rand, mediums at 13.65 rand and smalls at 12.30 rand. We expect prices to dip this week due to higher volumes and demand that will most likely not be able to keep up. We expect more large tomatoes to drive prices down as well now. As expected, carrot volumes dipped last week due to the rain, but despite this, carrot prices still dipped to 8.40 rand per kilogram last week, with demand that couldn't keep up. Large carrots traded on 9.51 rand, mediums at 6.57 rand and smalls at 4.81 rand. We still expect supply to the markets to pick up over the next few weeks, which can start to drive prices downward and keep it low as we head into July and August of this year. This video is proudly sponsored by Villa. Through world-class technology like MasterLock, localized for South African conditions, Villa helps you manage risk and increase productivity and get it right the first time, backed by research that keeps you ahead. The average pepper price increased by 1% to 19.13 rand per kilogram. We, however, saw green pepper prices dropping to 13.80 rand, yellow peppers increasing sharply to 31.93 rand and red peppers on 29.71 rand. This price is now 116% higher than last year this time, with volumes 18% lower year on year. Last year, the average price only started to climb in July onwards, which was due to more favorable production conditions. This year, we expect volumes to stay low and prices to remain on these higher levels at least until August. Pepper prices usually peak in August and September each year. Cabbage prices decreased by 14% to 3.33 rand per kilogram and is also likely to dip further this week. Garlic prices increased by 9% to 79.07 rand, with local garlic sharply higher on 86.35 rand and imported garlic on 84.88 rand. Garlic prices will likely remain on a higher level during June and July and then start trickling downwards from August onwards when we start seeing more local supplies coming into the markets. Spinach prices dropped by 4% to R5.01 per kilogram, with prices that will likely remain around these levels during June, July and August. Sweet potato prices increased by 2% to R5.07 last week and can also remain around these levels in June. Pumpkin prices increased by 3% to R3.38, while butternuts increased by 5% to R5.83. Both these prices can trade sideways during June, but will then start to increase and peak during September and October most likely. Green beans increased to R11.81, while cucumber prices traded on R22.22 last week. Our latest reports are also now available on our website, so go check them out at amtrends.co.za now. Moving over to the fruit markets, we saw the average banana price dropping to R7.21 per kilogram or R130 per 18 kilogram box. My expectation is that banana prices can stay on this lower level at least until August due to higher volumes expected over this period. Apple prices traded on R9.31 per kilogram, while pear prices remained on R9.15. Orange prices stayed on a lower level as expected and traded on R4.69 per kilogram. We anticipate prices to remain on a lower level over the following 2 to 3 months due to higher volumes also expected into the markets. Avocado prices increased by 5% to R16.16 per kilogram, still about 11% above last year's levels. Viertes traded on 23, Haas on 14 and Pinkertons also on R14 per kilogram. We continue to expect a slight upward price trend until October due to volumes that will also stay in a slight downward trend over this period, but we don't expect any drastic price changes soon. The average grape price increased by 19% to R62.85 per kilogram. Expect grape prices to increase sharply in June, peak in July, and most likely remain on a higher level in August due to lower volumes on the markets. Pineapples dropped to R10.56 and is likely to remain on a lower level in June and bottom out in July and August. Lemons increased by about 5% to R4.97, while the average blueberry price also increased to R169 per kilogram last week. This episode was proudly brought to you by Standard Bank and Villa Crop Protection. For more detailed insights, forecasts and free downloadable tools and reports, visit amtrends.co.za now. I'm Dr. Johnny van der Merwe. Thanks for tuning in and see you next week.